Hi people, it's Archivist here, coming at you with a review for Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. In the background I'll be showing some Star Wars Battlefront, but make no mistake, this video is going to be all about the new film. So, to avoid spoilers for a moment, is the film worth seeing? Did it live up to expectations? Is it as good as we all thought it would be? Well, you know what? The film is absolutely worth seeing. I think the film did live up to the hype. It didn't live up to expectations necessarily, but that's not in terms of quality, that's more in terms of what people thought would happen. Because this film manages to both be very familiar and also very surprising. And that's all I'm going to say in terms of no spoilers, because quite frankly, if I want to really talk about this film, talk about what I really enjoyed, I have to spoil bits of it. So I would recommend absolutely watching the film first, then coming back and seeing what you thought of it and whether my opinions align with yours. Or, you know, if you are just interested, then feel free to listen to the review and then watch it. Sometimes I do that. I wouldn't have done it in this case, and I wouldn't recommend doing it in this case because the surprises are definitely worth hearing when you actually watch the film for the first time. So naturally, let's begin with the characters that feature in The Force Awakens. If you've been following the hype up until this film, you probably know a lot of the characters already. And as this is a spoiler review, if you've already watched the film, well, you of course know the characters, but something that kind of surprised me is that the attention given to each character was not what I suspected. On the whole, I'd say that Rey is probably the primary focus of The Force Awakens. She is the new Jedi. She is given the most screen time, at least that's what I thought. Maybe Han Solo was a close second. Of course, there was a reason he was given such a high focus in this film as, spoiler alert, he dies. He gets stabbed right through the chest by Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren, by the way, being one of the most interesting dark side force wielders I've ever seen in a Star Wars film. So much of the time we have these very calm, very composed dark side wielders who might occasionally get a bit angry, but on the whole they are kind of looming, almost Dracula-esque, and I kind of feel like I'm making that comparison because of course Christopher Lee actually played one of them, being Count Dooku. But if you think of Darth Maul, he was a very acrobatic, very muted character. Then Count Dooku, he was also very calm, very in control, but very skilled. Darth Sidious, he was prone to the odd cackle, but on the whole, he was very sure of himself. That's the important thing to state. And even Darth Vader, he had a very looming, very assured presence in the original trilogy. But Kylo Ren is not exactly like that. At first, when you see him, you think, oh, he's the new Darth Vader. And in a way, yes, he is, but in a more subtle way, he's very, very unstable. The most unstable force wielder, I think, in perhaps the entire Star Wars franchise. He's emotionally driven, he's emotionally motivated, and a lot of the time his emotions get the better of him. There's quite a few bits in this film where he just flips out and starts slashing stuff up with his lightsaber, and I find that to be very effective. Because something that the prequels did wrong, if you ask me, is that it sort of dehumanized these Force wielders, these Jedi and these Sith. They weren't really prone to much emotion. They would try and constrain them, get full control of them, but Kylo Ren is quite the opposite, slashing things up, scaring people. Just, whereas Darth Vader may choke someone because they were incompetent, Kylo Ren does it because he's genuinely, passionately annoyed and frustrated, which is a very interesting way to go. And I think for that reason, I really enjoyed Kylo Ren as a villain. I thought he was different enough from what we've seen in the past. And also we saw a few new Force abilities. We saw the ability to extract the thoughts of people, actually read their mind and suck ideas out of them like a really advanced interrogation technique. Also, what I could only really describe as a Force lock, in that he could hold people in place and actually, for the first time ever, stop a laser bolt in its path, which looked really funky, you know, because the energy was still pulsing as it was held there, but it was stuck. It was quite cool, actually, and then he released it and it went and fired back. We've always been like, oh, they need to have the lightsaber because otherwise how will they deflect the laser blast? Well, this guy can just hold it in place. Pretty cool. And when they take the helmet off, I do wonder there. I think they may have done it a little bit too soon. So when Kylo removes his head when he's interrogating Rey, I think they should have left that for when Han Solo goes on the bridge and confronts him, and of course names him Ben after Ben Kenobi. One can only assume it's quite well, not quite. It's a very emotionally charged scene, without a doubt. Actually, the most emotional moment in the whole film, when Kylo actually stabs Han Solo, because I can only understand the motivation there as being that he's been driven down this path by Supreme Leader Snoke, who I really hope we get to see more of in future films. He needs some fleshing out. But he's been taken down this path that he is reluctant to go down himself. There are points where he says the light is calling to him and he has to actually resist it. So whereas in the past we've seen these Jedi saying we must not be tempted by the dark, now we're seeing a dark side wielder saying I don't want to be tempted by the light, which is quite curious. It's almost as if Supreme Leader Snoke has got something on him. Like, how did he do this? How did he do this to him? We don't know that yet. And that is actually something about this film that is quite interesting, in that, yes, some questions are answered, but a lot more are risen, and they will be hopefully answered across the course of this trilogy. So yes, we know that Kylo Ren is Han Solo and Leia's son, and we know that he went rogue after learning to use the Force under the leadership of Luke Skywalker. But how? Okay, well, they do say that Snoke did it, but we need a bit more than that. We need a little bit more nuance, and I don't doubt we'll have more of it. And I certainly don't blame the film for doing this. It's a trilogy. You need to open up more stuff. So I couldn't describe this as a self-contained film as much as I could do with New Hope. And there are a lot of comparisons to be made here with A New Hope. So whereas A New Hope had the Death Star, now we have Starkiller Base, which is a bigger, badder version capable of even more destruction, destroying what seemed like entire solar systems at once. And to power Starkiller, as you might guess from the name of it, it can suck the solar energy out of stars and then redirect it at the planets that you want to destroy. But fundamentally what we have here is another Death Star, and it's destroyed by a small fleet of X-Wings yet again, by hitting a weak point yet again. And there's two ways you can look at this idea of echoing the past. You can either say, if you're a fan, I really enjoy seeing these similar beats, these moments that we are familiar with but done in a, I'd say, more stylistic way. Or you can be like, this is just the same thing. Where's the originality? Where's the originality? Well, I am definitely on the side of I like the fact that it's being reminiscent, but at the same time having a different take on things. And while we're on the subject of things that echo the past and yet have their own new identity, let's look at the brilliant creation that is Rey, portrayed very well by Daisy Ridley. Now, she manages to embody parts of the original trio of characters. So Luke Skywalker, well, she's Force sensitive, she wields a lightsaber, she is a Jedi, very clear, obvious comparison there. Also, she's a bit like Han Solo in that she's scrappy, she has some great technical know-how, she can certainly take care of herself. She's lived a life of, in some ways, solidarity on Jakku, just looking for junk and selling it, trying to go kind of hand to mouth, really. And also like Leia in that she is an extremely powerful, strong female character, and I have no doubt that's going to give this movie a much broader appeal as a result. And we're seeing familiar stuff like the Millennium Falcon, but we're seeing entirely new characters. I think Kylo Ren is the most interesting. Rey is the main character, in my opinion, from what I could tell, what it felt like. Han Solo is, he's what links it to the original trilogy, and his death obviously creates a very powerful moment. Finn, he is just an average guy, really. He's this person who's under the First Order, he's a stormtrooper, but you see him very early on being distraught when he's seeing these other stormtroopers destroying a village, just shooting these civilians, and he can't do it, and there's a very effective moment where this other stormtrooper kind of wipes blood onto his helmet, and obviously it's very emotive, and it's the first time you see a stormtrooper actually feeling bad for another stormtrooper, and when it actually comes to shooting civilians, it's even worse, and so he becomes a renegade, a rebel. He goes away and he finds Rey on Jakku. And there's this constant on or off thing, like with Finn and Rey. Not so much a romantic thing. That is there, but it's kind of in the background a bit. It's more to do with who's the Jedi here, who's going to be the Force wielder. And it's not obvious for a while because I think Finn is the first one to take up the lightsaber. He uses it first, and he's very aggressive with it because he's never had any training with it, and he's actually having trouble taking on this stormtrooper who's got this kind of weird bayonet attachment to his gun that he fights, which is quite cool, but he's being very feral in terms of his attacks. And later on we see him take on Kylo Ren. You think, okay, he's got to be the hero, he's got to be the Force wielder. But no, he's not. He's just using the lightsaber because that's what he has on him. He loses to Kylo Ren, and then Rey turns up and manages to force pull the lightsaber away into her hand, and then they have that lightsaber fight. And I think I'll get to the lightsaber fight in a minute. I just want to touch on something else very quickly. The special effects in this film are so good. They are fantastic. Not only the practical effects and the practical sets, which add a lot of authenticity to the film and obviously mimic the styles of the original film, but the CGI. The CGI in this film is superb, and it's put to very good effect, especially with the different starfighters. When you see Poe Dameron piloting the X-Wing and kind of taking out 4 TIE fighters at once with very little effort, it looks good. When you see the Millennium Falcon skimming the surface of Jakku, that in particular was just very cool. You think, yes, this is how you utilize CGI. When you have that level of freedom, this is what you do with it. And I really enjoyed that. And also on the lightsabers, it was very good. And now to the lightsaber fight. You can go one of two ways with this, really. You can go the stylish acrobatic style, or you can go the emotionally charged style. The original trilogy being emotionally charged, and the prequels being more about style. Finesse, if you want. But it's quite obvious here that while the lightsaber fight at the end is more reminiscent of the original trilogy, there's a lot more emotion to it. There's also a good amount of finesse to it, and also just the damage that they do, you can really feel. When the lightsabers clash, you can really feel that spark. You can see the emotion in Kylo Ren and Rey's eyes, and also Finn's eyes in the time when he's doing it. And when the trees fall over around them, it's like they really can cause some damage. And the sound effect when you first hear Anakin's lightsaber, or Finn's, or Luke's, or whoever actually possesses this, I guess Rey now, that lightsaber turn on, it's very cool and it's very classic. It sounds especially classic, actually. I watched A New Hope 2 days before I watched this film, and that sound effect was just I think it might have been exactly the same sound effect, which is very nice. But I think it's the emotion between Kylo Ren and Rey that really sells that fight. And also the fact that there's that moment where Rey kind of takes a second to embrace the Force. And while there isn't a lot of Force battling, they don't really throw stuff at each other. I get the sense that when she tapped into the Force, she was just, I guess, more competent. She was more capable. She was faster. Her reflexes were better. And obviously she managed to actually defeat him, which is very cool. And, you get the sense that she's actually got a lot more power than Kylo Ren does, but Kylo Ren has the training. So, to conclude my thoughts on Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, I had a great time. I had a really fun time. And if there's one thing I'd want from this film, I just wish it was a bit longer, to be honest. I just see certain characters that I wish were fleshed out a little bit more. For instance, I'd say Captain Phasma and Poe Dameron. They could have definitely done with a bit more attention. But other than that, I absolutely loved The Force Awakens, as I'm sure many of you have, and it's basically a modern classic. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Superb. J.J. Abrams did not disappoint. And to be honest, I had faith in him. I've watched his Star Trek films and they were very good. And I thought, if he does a Star Wars film like this, I'll be happy. And he sort of did. You can certainly see his influence in places, especially some of the action scenes. So, as always, people, thanks very much for watching, and the Force be with you.